The young tenant in the chair allowed these thoughts to file soft-shod through his mind, while there drifted into the room furnished sounds and furnished scents. He heard in one room a tittering and incontinent, slack laughter, in others the monologue of a scold, the rattling of dice, a lullaby, and one crying dully. Above him a banjo tinkled with spirit. Doors banged somewhere. The elevated trains roared intermittently. A cat yelled miserably upon a back fence. And he breathed the breath of the house, a dank savor rather than a smell, a cold, musty effluvium as from underground vaults mingled with the reeking exhalations of linoleum and mildewed and rotten woodwork. Then, suddenly, as he rested there, the room was filled with the strong, sweet odor of mignonette. It came as upon a single buffet of wind, with such sureness and fragrance and emphasis that it almost seemed a living visitant. And the man cried aloud, "What, dear?" as if he had been called, and sprang up and faced about. The rich odor clung to him and wrapped him around. He reached out his arms for it, all his senses for the time confused and commingled. How could one be peremptorily called by an odor? Surely it must have been a sound, but was it not the sound that had touched, that had caressed him? "She has been in this room," he cried, and he sprang to wrest from it a token, for he knew he would recognize the smallest thing that had belonged to her, or that she had touched. This enveloping scent of mignonette, the odor that she had loved and made her own. Whence came it? The room had been but carelessly set in order. Scattered upon the flimsy dresser scarf were half a dozen hairpins, those discreet, indistinguishable friends of womankind, feminine of gender, infinite of mood, and uncommunicative of tense. These he ignored, conscious of their triumphant lack of identity. Ransacking the drawers of the dresser, he came upon a discarded, tiny, ragged handkerchief. He pressed it to his face. It was racy and insolent with heliotrope. He hurled it to the floor. In another drawer he found odd buttons, a theatre program, a pawnbroker's card, 2 lost marshmallows, a book on the divination of dreams. In the last was a woman's black satin hair bow, which halted him, poised between ice and fire. But the black satin hair bow is also femininity's demure, impersonal, common ornament, and tells no tales. And then he traversed the room like a hound on the scent, skimming the walls, considering the corners of the bulging matting on his hands and knees, rummaging mantel and tables, the curtains and hangings, the drunken cabinet in the corner, for a visible sign, unable to perceive that she was there, beside, around, against, within, above him, clinging to him, wooing him, calling him so poignantly through the finer senses that even his grosser ones became cognizant of the call. Once again he answered loudly, "Yes, dear," and turned, wild-eyed, to gaze on vacancy. For he could not yet discern form and colour and love and outstretched arms in the odour of mignonette. Oh God, whence that odour? And since when have odours had a voice to call? Thus he groped. He burrowed in crevices and corners and found corks and cigarettes. These he passed in passive contempt. But once he found in a fold of the matting a half-smoked cigar, and this he ground beneath his heel with a green and trenchant oath. He sifted the room from end to end. He found dreary and ignoble small records of many a peripatetic tenant, but of whom he sought, and who may have lodged there, and whose spirits seemed to hover there, he found no trace. And then he thought of the housekeeper. He ran from the haunted room downstairs and to a door that showed a crack of light. She came out to his knock. He smothered his excitement as best he could. "Will you tell me, madam," he besought her, "who occupied the room I have before I came?" "Yes, sir, I can tell you again. 'Twas Sprowls and Mooney, as I said, Miss Beretta Sprowls. It was in the theatres. But Mrs. Mooney she was. My house is well known for respectability. The marriage certificate hung, framed, on a nail over— What kind of lady was Mrs. Sprowls? In looks, I mean." "Why, black-haired, sir, short and stout, with a comical face. They left a week ago Tuesday." "And before they occupied it?" "Why, there was a single gentleman connected with the draying business. He left owing me a week. Before him was Mrs. Crowder and her 2 children. They stayed 4 months, and back of them was old Mr. Doyle, whose sons paid for him. He kept the room 6 months. That goes back a year, sir, and further I do not remember." He thanked her and crept back to his room. The room was dead. The essence that had vivified it was gone. The perfume of mignonette had departed. In its place was the old stale odor of mouldy house furniture, of atmosphere in storage. The ebbing of his hope drained his faith. He sat staring at the yellow, singing gaslight. Soon he walked to the bed and began to tear the sheets into strips. With the blade of his knife, he drove them tightly into every crevice around windows and door. When all was snug and taut, he turned out the light, turned the gas full on again, and laid himself gratefully upon the bed. It was Mrs. McCool's night to go with the can for beer, so she fetched it and sat with Mrs. Purdy in one of those subterranean retreats where housekeepers foregather and the worm dearth seldom. I rented out my 3rd floor back this evening, said Mrs. Purdy across a fine circle of foam. A young man took it. He went up to bed 2 hours ago. Now did ye, Mrs. Purdy, ma'am? Said Mrs. McCool with intense admiration. You do be a wonder for renting rooms of that kind. And did you tell him then? She concluded in a husky whisper, laden with mystery. Rooms, said Mrs. Purdy in her furriest tones, are furnished to rent. I did not tell him, Mrs. McCool. 'Tis right ye are, ma'am. 'Tis by renting rooms we keep alive. You have the real sense for business, ma'am. There'll be many a people rejecting of a room if they be told a suicide has been after dying in the bed of it. As you say, we has our living to be making, remarked Mrs. Purdy. Yes, ma'am, 'tis true. 'Tis just 1 week ago this day I helped ye lay out the 3rd floor back. A pretty slip of a colleen she was to be killing herself with the gas. A sweet little face she had, Mrs. Purdy, ma'am. She'd have been called handsome, as you say, said Mrs. Purdy, assenting but critical. But for that mole she had growing by her left eyebrow.